Hey guys, tonight we dive into one of those Greek myths that makes you wonder if the ancient world was just one long fever dream. Picture this, a god with thunder in his hands and the sky at his command, deciding to woo a mortal by turning into a bird, specifically a swan. Yes, an actual honking, feathered, pond-floating swan. Not exactly the height of romance by today's standards, but this was Zeus, king of the gods, and subtlety was never really his thing. You're standing on the edge of a dream. Moonlight glimmers across a still lake, silver clouds drifting lazily overhead. The air is thick with the scent of reeds and the quiet rustle of night insects. Somewhere in the distance, a single frog croaks its opinion on the whole situation. You shift your weight and glance up. There's something drifting low across the sky, graceful and deliberate. A shape with long white wings gliding just above the tree line. It's Zeus. Of course it is. And you're about to witness one of the most famously bizarre decisions in mythology. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, let me know in the comments where you're listening from, what time it is, and which myth or sleepy story you want me to aim for next. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stroll through the soft dawn of ancient Greece, a thin veil of mist clinging to the hills. The gods aren't exactly early risers, but Zeus? He's already scheming. You catch him reclining on a high marble outcrop, casually plucking thunderbolts apart like petals from a daisy. She loves me not, he mutters, though to be honest, even he doesn't know which answer he prefers. Leda, Queen of Sparta, is the unfortunate object of his divine attention, mortal, regal, and already married to King Tyndareus, which in mythological terms means she might as well have a flashing neon sign over her head that says, "Expect drama here." She's known for her beauty, her poise, and, as you'll find out, for having one of the weirdest maternity stories in recorded myth. Now, to be fair, this isn't the first time Zeus has transformed himself to pursue someone. There was that time he turned into a golden shower to get with Danae. Yes, that was somehow considered seductive. And the time he became a bull for Europa. But the Swan plan, that one's uniquely unhinged. What's the actual motive here? Some say it was love. Others say it was ego. Historians still argue whether Zeus truly desired connection or was just collecting romantic escapades like Pokemon cards. But you, dear listener, are simply here for the ride. And what a ride it is. Zeus, never one for half measures, descends from Olympus in his chosen form. Wings spread wide, feathers shimmering like frost under torchlight, he flies with practiced grace. You trail behind, half walking, half hovering, the way dreams allow. Your feet never quite touch the ground, but you still manage to stub your toe on a pine root, because some dream logic is universal. He's not just any swan, mind you. This is peak swandom, regal arch of the neck, that perfect balance between elegance and smugness. If you didn't know better, you'd think he was going to host a royal banquet in a lily pond. Meanwhile, Leda is walking along the banks of the river Eurotas, trying to enjoy her morning in peace. The birds chirp. The breeze lifts her long blue robes, dyed with real woad, which was both fashionable and smelled like sadness. She's probably planning a royal banquet or mentally organizing the palace grain stores. You know, queen things. Then she hears it, a faint splash, a low whimper, something feathered and tragic thrashing weakly in the water. Zeus has begun his performance. Because, of course, he's not just going to be a swan. He has to act like one in need of rescue. He's bobbing awkwardly, wings slightly tucked, as if injured, eyes wide and innocent. Honestly, he deserves an Oscar. Leda, being a compassionate human with zero idea she's in a myth, approaches the sad waterfowl. "Oh, poor thing," she might murmur. "Did someone hurt you?" She kneels by the reeds, reaches out a careful hand, and the moment she touches him, flash, the myth ignites. Now, there are many versions of what happens next, some more fantastical, some more controversial. Some say he merely enchants her. Others suggest a dreamlike, ambiguous union. The older poets are annoyingly vague, probably on purpose. They loved mystery more than accuracy. What we do know is that something sacred, strange, and myth-defining happens there by the water. A transformation not just of shape, but of fate. You feel it in the air, a quiet rumble like distant thunder. Zeus's presence fades into the background, and Leda, unknowingly, sets the stage for one of history's most legendary family trees. And here's your fun fringe fact for the night. Ancient art sometimes shows Leda cuddling an enormous egg in her lap, like it's just a casual Tuesday. Goose-sized, swan-sized. Either way, you've got to admire her chill. As the sun climbs higher over the olive groves, you step back. The reeds sway gently. The river flows on, uncaring. The frog from earlier croaks again, possibly judging everyone involved. And you begin to suspect that this myth, strange as it is only just warming up. You drift forward, not walking now, but gliding along the shallow banks of the Eurotas, the myth rolling on around you like soft mist. Leda has returned to her palace in Sparta, her robes damp and clinging to her ankles, her mind probably spinning with confusion, questions, and maybe a nagging sense that something more than just rescuing a wounded swan happened. She doesn't speak of it, not yet, but you can feel the change. Something divine clings to her now, like the scent of thunder after a storm. Sparta, in this moment of myth, isn't the militaristic state it would become famous for, not quite yet. It's still more palace than barracks, more feasts and vineyards than phalanx formations. You move through the halls of Leda's home, walls painted in deep ochres, pillars wrapped in ivy, courtyards blooming with wild thyme. Somewhere a harpist plucks a gentle melody. as servants carry trays of figs and wine. History rarely pauses for the weird, and life goes on. Except Leda isn't quite herself, and soon everyone notices. Now, let's address the egg in the room. Yes, the egg, because that's where this story becomes extra scrambled. Sometime after that strange riverside encounter, Leda lays, or discovers, or is gifted, depending on the version, a pair of enormous, shimmering eggs. You stand nearby as she unwraps them from silken cloth, fingers trembling slightly, breath shallow. One egg has a pearly blue sheen, the other a golden hue like late afternoon sunlight. They're larger than geese eggs, obviously, and definitely not chicken-friendly. And then they hatch. No, not with cracking yolks or baby birds. These are mythological eggs after all. Out come children. Yes, full-sized infants, healthy, squirming, and strangely serene for beings just born from celestial poultry packaging. From one egg, Helen and Clytemnestra. From the other, Castor and Pollux. Though, again, ancient sources can't agree. Some say Helen and Pollux were divine, children of Zeus, and the others mortal, fathered by Tyndareus, Leda's very confused husband. Others suggest all four are divine. And some say Zeus turned into a goose, not a swan, but let's not get lost in the bird lore spiral. Historians still argue whether this twin birth was meant to symbolize the duality of man and God, or just an ancient poetic way to avoid awkward dinner table questions about paternity. You peer into the cradles, hand-carved, lined with soft wool. Helen, already preternaturally beautiful, sleeps like she's waiting to be declared the cause of 1,000 ships. Pollux has a slight glow about him. Castor fidgets. Clytemnestra already looks like someone with plans. Outside the palace, word spreads. The queen bore eggs, divine children, a prophecy. Depending on who you ask, it's either a sign of favor from Olympus or an elaborate cover story for a scandal. But the real drama, it's still years away. You follow the twins as they grow, Castor and Pollux, inseparable. One mortal, one immortal. One destined to die, the other to grieve. They wrestle in olive groves, race chariots across the plains, and argue constantly over whose turn it is to help with chores. Their bond is legendary even now, strong enough to echo into the stars, where they'll eventually become the constellation Gemini. But that's a few betrayals down the road. Meanwhile, Helen blossoms into the kind of beauty that artists would later use to define entire eras. You pass her one afternoon in the palace garden, a crown of woven laurel on her head, a honeycomb in her hand. She laughs at something her nursemaid says, and the sun hits her hair just right. You get it now. Why gods and kings alike will come unraveled for her. And Clytemnestra, sharp-eyed, often overlooked, but never unaware. She watches everything, especially Helen, and files each moment away like a sword waiting to be drawn. One day she'll be a queen, a murderer, a legend in her own right. But for now, she just watches. Back in the palace, Tyndareus tries to be a good stepfather slash maybe real father. He hosts games, offers sacrifices to Apollo, and keeps a running tally of which gods he might have offended. You can't blame him. If your wife laid eggs and they hatched into demigods, you'd probably keep an extra wine jug on hand, too. Let's pause here for a quirky tidbit. In some obscure retellings, there was a third egg, a forgotten sibling, perhaps, who wandered off into mythological obscurity, destined to become a minor river deity or a local weather spirit with excellent hair. Greek myths are like that. So many names, so little certainty. One evening you sit by the palace gates as twilight deepens and torches are lit. The scent of roasting lamb mingles with wild sage. Inside, the twins spar with wooden swords. Helen listens to tales from a Phoenician storyteller, and Leda, now both mother and myth, gazes out over her garden, thinking of the river, the Swan, and what it all means. You'd ask her, but even she doesn't know. The years drift like silk in the summer breeze, and Sparta becomes a cradle of contradictions, half legendary playground, half ticking mythological time bomb. You pace the colonnades of the palace, shadows stretching long across the tiled floors as the four children of Leda step into adolescence. They're beautiful, every one of them, in that annoyingly divine way that makes everyone else feel like background scenery. Helen, of course, draws the most attention. You watch as foreign envoys arrive with awkward gifts, jewelry, flutes, peacocks, all vying for her hand. Some come with entire ships behind them. One even shows up with a trained bear and a poem that rhymes olive with love it. You give him points for effort, but the tension is growing. Kings don't travel across seas unless they smell power or trouble. Tyndareus, wise in his way, realizes this could spiral into something very Trojan very fast. So he devises a plan. Each suitor must swear an oath. No matter who Helen chooses, all others will defend that marriage. Support it, protect it, definitely not start any wars about it. It's a clever political move. Historians still argue whether Tyndareus came up with it himself or borrowed the idea from an old Delphic priest with a fondness for contracts and chaos. Eventually, Helen chooses Menelaus. He's handsome, capable, moderately famous. More importantly, he's not too proud to be chosen. They marry under a moonlit sky with garlands of myrtle and drums echoing across the valley. You linger near the feast tables, nibbling on mythical grapes and watching as fate sharpens its teeth in the background. Meanwhile, Clytemnestra marries Agamemnon. That name should ring a tiny alarm bell in your head. Yes, that Agamemnon, soon to be king of Mycenae, commander of the Greek forces in the Trojan War, and, depending on how you squint at the myths, either a hero or a walking disaster in a bronze helmet. At this stage, though, he's just a powerful man marrying a sharp-minded woman who knows exactly what she's getting into. And as for Castor and Pollux, their bond grows only tighter. You follow them through fields of dry grass, swordplay echoing off marble walls, laughter ricocheting across the years. Castor, ever grounded, a master horseman. Pollux, divine and volatile, able to throw a punch that could knock out a minotaur. Together, they become the Dioscuri, twin protectors, brothers to Helen and Clytemnestra, inseparable even when fate begins to pull at their seams. You see them on stormy nights helping lost sailors reach shore. You hear whispers from Corinth and Crete about two glowing figures appearing during naval battles, saving lives. People begin to light small fires in their name on the prows of ships, early forms of votive candles, hoping for safe passage. It's the ancient world's version of leaving a five-star review. But every myth, like every good bedtime story, has its turning point. And for the twins it comes with the abduction of cattle. Yes, cattle. You're probably expecting something grand, dragons, gods, or maybe a cursed sword. But no, it starts with a herd of cows and a pair of cousins. Lynceus and Idas, fellow adventurers, part-time heroes, full-time troublemakers. They had once shared campaigns with the twins, joined in on famous quests like the hunt for the Caledonian boar. But old alliances tend to wear thin in Greek mythology. The four cousins steal some cattle, depending on the version, from each other or a third party. Details, as always, get fuzzy. But the real tension comes when they divide the loot. Idas, being mortal and ambitious, tries to cheat the system, and Pollux, being half immortal and dramatically offended, does not take it well. You can feel the shift as soon as it happens. Clouds gather over the hills. Olive branches bend in the wind. Somewhere, a poet starts writing in frantic hexameter. The confrontation turns deadly. Castor, mortal and ever loyal, is struck down. You hear the sound before you see it, a hollow gasp, the sudden silence of wind, a heartbeat skipped. Pollux turns, and in that moment, rage and grief collide in his chest like two storms trying to share a sky. He kills Lynceus with a thrust of his divine spear. Idas, enraged, raises his sword, and just as it's about to fall, Zeus intervenes. A thunderbolt crashes down, bright enough to blind, loud enough to echo through centuries. Idas is gone, and there you are, standing beside Pollux, who kneels by Castor's body, his twin, his other half, his brother who cannot return. Now, here's your mainstream historical fact. In many Greek city-states, especially Sparta, twin deities were celebrated as protectors and symbols of dual strength. The Dioscuri had temples, festivals, and even battle chants in their honor. But this moment right here, it's not myth anymore. It's heartbreak, plain and raw. Pollux doesn't just grieve, he bargains. He climbs Mount Olympus, barefoot and furious, demanding an audience with his father. "Take my immortality," he pleads. "Give it to Castor. Let him live again." Even Zeus, storm-wielding god-king, hesitates. Eventually, he offers a compromise. The twins will share eternity, half the year in Olympus, half in the underworld. Life and death pass back and forth like a torch. It's beautiful and tragic and deeply weird, even by myth standards. Fringe fact for the night. In some versions, they alternate days, not seasons. Imagine having to spend every Tuesday in the land of the dead. That's a rough calendar. And just like that, Castor and Pollux become the stars, literally. You look up into the velvet night, and there they are, Gemini, twin lights pulsing side by side. A reminder that some bonds are too strong for even death to separate. You lie back in the grass outside the palace, eyes skyward, the scent of time and torch smoke in the air. The stars flicker, the world hushes, and somewhere in the distance a swan glides silently across the surface of the river. The years pass, and with them the gods themselves seem to change shape, flickering from golden gods to flawed mortals, from heroes to victims. You can hear the soft murmur of the city around you, where the rise and fall of gods and kings are no more than whispers, carried on the winds of time. The tragedy of the twins, Castor and Pollux, settles into the mythology of the world, sung by bards, immortalized by poets. But still, the story carries a weight, heavier than any myth should bear. Yet this tragedy, this myth of sorrow and immortality, serves only as a prelude. What you do not know, as you sit by the flickering torches of Sparta, is that soon enough a storm is coming, one that will rattle even the gods themselves. It begins with Paris. Yes, you know him, the dashing Trojan prince, the one with the face so beautiful it could launch 1,000 ships. Oh, that Paris, the one who, like so many before him, becomes enmeshed in the web of gods and mortals, and whose actions will forever echo through history like the rattle of chain mail in the wind. But you're not there yet. You are here in this still moment of calm before the storm. Helen, now queen of Sparta, stands with Menelaus at the heart of the palace. Her beauty, which once seemed like a gift from the gods, now feels more like a burden. They have built a life together, a life of diplomacy, feasts, and perhaps a little too much quiet loneliness. The two of them, still young, but with the years pressing in on their shoulders, make an odd couple. Menelaus, ever dutiful, is a king in the traditional sense, stern, just, but also somewhat dull. Helen, in contrast, is a woman caught between her divine nature and the very mortal reality of her marriage. You sense it, the restlessness that runs like a current beneath her calm exterior. It's the same current that ran through her when she was a girl in the palace, before the suitors, before the oaths. You feel it now, creeping through the corridors, the tension, the slow turn of fate's wheel. But you can't place it yet. You don't know what's about to unfold. It's as if the threads of destiny are about to knot tighter, making this place, the heart of Sparta, a ticking clock, and the air heavy with the promise of something inevitable. Here's the quirky bit for you. In later tellings of this story, some claim that Helen wasn't even in Sparta when Paris arrived. They suggest she was off in a hidden corner of the world, maybe in Crete or some distant island, living under a sort of divine protection. That would have certainly made things easier, wouldn't it? But that's not the version we're following. No, in this one, Helen is right where she belongs, though whether she wants to be there is another matter. And then, as fate loves to do, it arrives. Paris, the charming and perhaps overly self-assured Prince of Troy, comes to Sparta as part of a diplomatic mission, or rather, he says it's a diplomatic mission. You watch him, leaning against the marble pillars of the grand hall, offering his best smile as he feigns politeness. The charm, the disarming looks, they are weaponized. You can see it now. Paris is here with a singular purpose, to meet Helen, to woo her, to steal her away. His arrival is like a breeze that promises a storm. He tells Menelaus of his travels, his city's plight. He speaks of alliances, of promises, but his eyes are focused elsewhere. They are focused on Helen, and that's when the air shifts. It happens slowly at first, a momentary flicker in her gaze, a slight deepening of her breath, but you feel it. Helen is drawn to him. It's not that Menelaus doesn't notice. He does. But he's too busy with his kingly duties to see the deeper current swirling underfoot. He's a man of stability, of order, and this is not what he signed up for. He can't see the spark in his wife's eyes as Paris speaks, but you see it? You know this is not just a visit. This is the start of something that will unravel everything. You wonder as you linger by the grand columns just how much the gods are really behind all of this. Was Paris's arrival truly a matter of chance? Or was it another divine intervention, one of those strange games the gods play with mortals? Did Aphrodite whisper in his ear, urging him to be bold and to seek out the most beautiful woman in the world? Was it Artemis's quiet influence, luring the two together? Historians still argue whether the gods manipulate fate this directly or if mortals just happen to fall into their own traps. Helen, beautiful as ever, walks with Paris in the garden after the feast. There's no denying the attraction between them. Paris makes her laugh in that easy, unguarded way that men like Menelaus never could. Helen is caught in a dilemma. It's not just the gods pulling her in, it's something deeper, the pull of destiny. You know this because you see it in her eyes, in her every gesture as she watches him. She is at war with herself. And then, before you can really understand it, before you can fully place the weight of this moment, it happens. Helen leaves with Paris. There's no grand speech, no tearful goodbye. She slips away into the night, leaving behind her husband, her city, and the promises of peace. The first ship to carry her to Troy set sail the next day, and with it the spark that will ignite the Trojan War. You feel it, the stillness of the air before the storm breaks, the first ripples in the water before the waves crash over everything. You don't remember falling asleep, but here you are, adrift on the sea, sailing beside Helen and Paris as their ship slips across the wine-dark waters. You're not alone. The wind is turned sharp, and the horizon stretches endlessly, broken only by the faint silhouette of distant islands. The waves speak in slow rhythms like old secrets. The crew pretends not to notice the infamous stowaway, the Queen of Sparta, veiled and silent, staring out toward a future that even the gods might hesitate to guess. Helen says nothing, and Paris, for all his charm, fidgets nervously, fiddling with a golden seal ring on his finger. There's excitement, yes, but also fear. He's taken something the world considers sacred, and the gods don't take kindly to men who play at being divine.
You can feel it in the way the waves shudder beneath the hull. The gods are watching, Aphrodite especially. She's smug. After all, it was she who promised Paris the love of the most beautiful woman in the world as a reward for naming her the fairest during that petty apple contest. You remember the golden apple, the goddesses bickering like children. Yes, that was the spark that led to this, a beauty pageant judged by a mortal. What could possibly go wrong? But you also remember Hera's glare and Athena's quiet, vengeful silence as she withdrew from that ridiculous contest. They weren't just angry, they were waiting. And now their time is coming. Still, for now, the sea stays calm. You wander below deck, past ropes and oil jars and little amphora of salted fish, and you wonder, what must Helen be thinking? Is she excited, terrified, regretful? The myths don't say. They always assume her motives, never ask her. Some say she was under a spell, cursed by Aphrodite to fall in love. Others insist she left willingly, craving escape from her dull marriage. Historians still argue whether Helen was a pawn, a traitor, or a woman simply chasing her own freedom. Either way, the damage is done. Back in Sparta, Menelaus wakes to an empty bed and a whisper of perfume in the air. He's confused at first, then angry, then cold. Cold in that way kings get when something they own is taken. You stand at his shoulder as he stares out at the empty harbor, fists clenched. He doesn't rage. Not yet. No, he plots. He sends messengers. He consults omens. He pulls the threads of that old oath, the one all of Helen's suitors swore when they wanted to marry her. The oath of Tyndareus, that no matter who won her hand, they would all defend the marriage if ever it were threatened. A forgotten promise, wrapped in wine and laughter years ago, now resurrected in fire. Elsewhere, the messengers scatter like sparks across the world, riding swift horses, crossing deserts, scaling cliffs, and slipping through mountain passes. Each one carries the same message. Helen has been taken. We are going to war. And oh, the names that rise from their long-forgotten corners. Odysseus, who's been quite happy pretending to be mad on the rocky island of Ithaca, dragging an oxen plow through the surf. But you know he's not really mad, he's just trying to dodge the draft. He has a new son, after all, a quiet life. But the oath is binding, and eventually Odysseus sets down the plow, wipes his brow, and packs for war.
Achilles, still a teenager, is hiding in plain sight. Literally. His mother, Thetis, has stashed him away on an island, dressed as a girl, hoping no one will find him. But the Greeks aren't fools. They show up with gifts, gowns, necklaces, and one shiny sword. And when Achilles is the only girl who lunges for the weapon, well, the jig is up. He's in. You can almost see it, this gathering storm of heroes, gods, ships, and fate. The greatest army the world has ever known, assembling like thunderclouds over the Aegean, and all for a woman. You sit beside the fire at night as the war drums begin to beat. There's talk of 1,000 ships. You can hear the shipbuilders cursing in the dry heat, fletchers preparing arrows, blacksmiths hammering out blades until the air itself rings with iron. But there's a strange quietness beneath it all, a pause, as if even the wind holds its breath. Here's something odd. Some older versions of the myth claim that Helen never actually went to Troy, that Paris, cursed by the gods, was fooled into carrying a phantom, an image of Helen conjured by Hera or Zeus, while the real Helen waited out the war in Egypt, sipping date wine and regretting all her choices. It's an interesting twist, and if true, imagine the war fought for a mirage, 1,000,000 lives traded for a ghost. Classic gods. Still, in our telling, Helen is in Troy. She walks now through the high-walled city beside Paris, who is beaming as if he's just brought home the world's finest painting. The Trojans are polite, suspicious, but polite. Hector, Paris's older brother, the real war hero of Troy, says nothing at first. His silence says plenty. And then there's Priam, the old king of Troy. He welcomes Helen with measured words and tired eyes. He knows what this means. War is coming. The gods are watching, and their blessings are rarely gifts. They're more like poisoned fruit, beautiful, irresistible, and inevitably fatal. You follow Helen as she walks the ramparts, gazing down at the plains below. She can already picture them, filled with Greek tents and war cries, smoke and siege towers. Her fingers brush the warm stone of the wall. She knows what's coming. She's lived long enough among the divine to recognize the scent of doom. And yet she does not leave, not yet. The ship sets sail. 1,000 hulls slice through the sea, sails billowing like the wings of storm birds. The Greeks are coming. The gods are ready. The war has begun. You find yourself standing on the shoreline now, sand warm beneath your toes, watching the Greek fleet pull into the harbor like a moving forest of masts. The air is thick with salt and sweat, and the slow, deliberate clang of armor being strapped into place. Hundreds of ships, all carved with snarling beasts and painted eyes to ward off misfortune, now crowd the coast of Troy like the world's worst welcome party. And the men, oh, the men, bronze-skinned, sunburnt, many of them cursing because they've already misplaced their spears or got blisters from rowing. This was supposed to be glorious, remember? Glorious, heroic, noble. But in reality, it's noisy, chaotic, and smells strongly of boiled fish and bad decisions. You stand near the makeshift cooking fires, watching as a particularly confident Mycenaean warrior tries to roast a scorpion on a stick, convinced it's a delicacy. You take a step back, just in case.
Odysseus is here, of course, and already muttering about how stupid this whole campaign is. You trail behind him as he tries once again to talk sense into Agamemnon, king of kings, commander of the Greeks, and let's be honest, a man with all the diplomacy of a hammer. Agamemnon listens, nods thoughtfully, then immediately ignores all of Odysseus's advice and calls for a dramatic speech instead. Classic. You take in the camp, which has now sprawled along the beach in a mess of tents, altars, cooking pits, and ego. Over there, Achilles sulks under a poplar tree, polishing his shield with such vigor it could blind a sea god. He's beautiful, yes, unnervingly so, but he's also got that teenager energy. Everything is either the best thing ever or an unforgivable insult. His companion Patroclus sits nearby, trying to keep things light. You catch a snatch of conversation, something about shellfish and divine punishment, and it makes you smile. And then there's the first formal clash. A skirmish, really. Just a handful of men testing each other's reflexes and armor quality. Spears whistle, swords clang, and sand kicks up in plumes. You're tucked safely behind a supply crate as the fighting dies down, but the mood shifts. Blood has been drawn. Troy has seen their faces now. Inside the city, you watch Helen on the high walls. Her face is unreadable as she watches men die for her, some shouting her name like a battle cry, others cursing it. The Trojan elders gather near her and murmur amongst themselves. Some call her goddess, others witch. Historians still argue whether Helen was revered by the Trojans as a divine gift or resented as a living curse. You're not sure either. Priam, the old king, invites her to name the Greek warriors as they march across the plain. You stand beside her, one hand shielding your eyes from the morning sun, as she picks them out like constellations in a blood-stained sky. Agamemnon, the thunderhead of a man. Odysseus, always just slightly out of step with the others, like he's dancing to a beat only he can hear. And of course, Achilles, who glows even from a distance. It's not all war drums and bravado, though. One night, as the winds shift and the sea groans softly in the dark, you sit by the campfire with a small group of soldiers sharing stories. One man tells you that he saw a sea nymph combing her hair on the rocks, singing a lullaby that made his helmet float off his head. Another swears he heard voices in the dunes, long-dead kings arguing about which war was worse. You nod solemnly. It's always like this near divine conflict. The world starts to fray around the edges. Meanwhile, on Mount Olympus, the gods are thrilled. War is their reality TV. Athena sharpens her spear with quiet purpose. Hera throws shade at Aphrodite every chance she gets.
And Zeus? Zeus lounges in his sky palace, probably shirtless, sipping nectar and pretending he has nothing to do with this. You roll your eyes. He always has something to do with this.
Still, even Zeus isn't immune to drama. Word spreads. He's spotted eyeing another mortal woman, this time in Boeotia. Hera glares daggers. The earth rumbles in anticipation of the domestic thunderstorm that's about to unfold. But more on that later. Back in Troy, the war inches forward like honey dripping from a cracked jar, slow, sticky, and inevitable. Days blur together, speeches are made, challenges shouted across open ground. One-on-one duels replace full battles more often than not. It's all very dramatic and, honestly, a little theatrical. You half expect someone to pull out a script and announce Act 3, Spears and Regret. But the tension is real. Supplies grow scarce. Tempers flare. You overhear a spat between two Greek kings over who gets the last amphora of wine. Achilles mutters something about honor, and before you know it, a chariot is overturned and someone's tent is on fire. War is exhausting even when you're not dying. By now you've found a rhythm in this strange new life. You rise with the sound of soldiers sharpening blades. You nap when the sun bakes the beach into a golden haze. You avoid stepping in the horse dung near the latrine trench. And at night you lie awake, listening to the soft sobs of men remembering their homes. And there's something else, a strange calm settling over the city of Troy. They've held the Greeks off for now. Children still play in the streets, markets still open. But there's an ache behind the smiles, a question hanging in the air. How long can this last? You spot Paris walking the garden paths, his tunic too clean for a man at war. He still believes this will end in romance. You're not so sure. And Helen? She sits under a fig tree, combing her hair with fingers that tremble slightly. You catch her humming a song you don't recognize, something ancient, sad. Maybe she's remembering Sparta, or maybe she's just trying to forget. The wind shifts. It's nothing grand, not the howl of some divine intervention or a booming omen from above, just a small gust that flips a cooking pot lid and scatters olive pits across the sand. But you feel it in your bones. Things are changing. By now the war has slouched into its second year, like a guest who doesn't realize the party ended months ago. The Greek camp is less a gleaming army now, and more a dusty sprawl of bickering kings and faded tents. The bravado has dulled. The bronze has tarnished. You pass a soldier using his helmet as a soup bowl, which feels metaphorically accurate. The quarrels grow louder. You linger near the command tent just in time to hear Achilles and Agamemnon shouting at each other. Again, it's over a girl this time, a priest's daughter named Briseis. Agamemnon, in all his kingly wisdom, has decided that since he had to give up his own war prize, he'll just take Achilles instead. Bold move, absolutely disastrous. Achilles' face tightens like someone
just insulted his mother and his spear. You're pretty sure he invents a new Greek curse on the spot. He storms off, dragging his pride behind him like a wounded lion. And then he quits, just flat out refuses to fight. You watch him retreat to his tent, flanked by Patroclus, who tries to console him with quiet words and carefully avoided eye contact. Achilles lies on the sand, staring at the tent ceiling like it personally offended him. And just like that, the Greeks lose their best fighter over a girl, a grudge, and a king who doesn't know when to stop talking. Historians still argue whether Achilles' withdrawal was a moral protest or just divine-level sulking. You think it might be both. Meanwhile, the Trojans begin to gain confidence. Hector, son of Priam and the city's favorite war hero, rides out each morning with his bronze gleaming and his horse practically glowing. He's kind, noble, a good husband, basically the guy you'd trust to water your plants while you're on vacation. You follow him as he inspects the city walls, speaks kindly to the bakers, and kisses his baby's forehead before marching back to battle. It's hard not to like him. Even the Greeks secretly do. With Achilles out of the game, Hector flourishes. The Trojans push the Greeks back toward their ships. Panic sets in. You overhear one of the younger soldiers weep into his bread, muttering about how he misses the goats back home. Another insists he saw the sea gods arguing in the surf last night. You nod, gently pat his shoulder, and avoid asking questions. You know things are truly bad when Odysseus suggests apologizing to Achilles. Agamemnon balks at first. Then, after some tactical groaning and a mostly insincere speech, he agrees. You join the embassy to Achilles' tent. Odysseus, Ajax the Greater, and old Phoenix, Achilles' former tutor and current professional guilt-tripper. They offer riches, apologies, promises, and compliments so flattering they practically sparkle. But Achilles? Stone, face. He reclines on a woven mat, eyes unreadable, and delivers a speech so beautiful and melancholy it could make a dryad cry. He talks about choice, about how he knows he'll die if he fights, but also how pointless it feels to be loyal to a man who only values him for muscle. You feel it settle in your chest like a stone dropped in still water. He refuses. The delegation trudges back, defeated, and morale hits a new low. Even the cooking fires seem to burn half-heartedly. That night, you wander the edge of the beach, letting the moonlight guide your steps. Somewhere in the distance, a lyre plays a soft, mournful tune. You think it might be Patroclus. You wonder what he says to Achilles when no one's listening. You wonder if even he can reach the place Achilles has retreated to, the place beyond pride and rage, into something quieter, more fatal. Days stretch on. The Trojans press their advantage. They burn a few ships. You see men fall, hear their armor clatter as it hits the sand. The beach becomes a graveyard of broken shields and shattered dreams. A Trojan arrow narrowly misses your foot, and you make a mental note to walk more carefully during sieges. In the quiet of an olive grove, you come across a scribe writing by firelight. He's not a soldier, just a young man from Athens who followed the army to record heroism in neat ink strokes. He confesses that he started to write about the moments no one will celebrate, the exhausted cooks, the crying boys, the soldiers who never wanted to fight but didn't know how to say no. You sit beside him and listen to the scratch of his stylus. History, he says, isn't just what the victors say. It's what people remember when they're alone. You don't sleep much that night, not from fear exactly, more from a strange tightness in your chest, like the air's been stretched too thin, like the story is winding too tightly and something is about to snap. And then it happens. Patroclus puts on Achilles' armor. He does it not out of ego, but out of love and desperation. The Greeks need hope. Achilles won't give it, so Patroclus borrows it. He leads the Myrmidons, Achilles' personal guard, into battle. For a moment it works. The Trojans fall back. The Greeks cheer. Even the gods pause, brows raised. You stand on a dune, watching the flash of bronze and plume, thinking maybe, just maybe. But then Hector appears. They fight. It's not drawn out or theatrical. It's fast, brutal, and final. Hector kills Patroclus. The helmet tumbles off. The truth is revealed. Achilles' armor is soaked in another's blood. You can hear the scream before it reaches your ears. Achilles has felt it. Something deeper than rage, deeper than pride. Something final. The entire camp holds its breath. You don't have to be standing near Achilles to feel what happens next. The grief rolls off him in waves. Not the quiet, tearful kind either. This is storm grief, violent and sharp, like the sky itself could crack open from the sound of it. He doesn't weep. He howls. He tears at his hair, smears dust over his face, throws himself to the ground like the earth might swallow his pain. You stay back, not out of fear exactly. Well, maybe a little, but mostly because there's something sacred about this kind of heartbreak. You don't interrupt it, you just let it burn. Historians still argue whether Achilles loved Patroclus as a brother, a friend, or something more. The truth is probably more complicated and simpler. Achilles loved him in the way that makes the world meaningless when the person is gone. You've seen grief before, but not like this. Not in someone who seemed invincible until the moment his heart broke. He swears vengeance, of course, loudly, vividly, and to several gods at once. You're pretty sure you hear him threaten the sea. He demands new armor because Hector took the old one. His mother, Thetis, rises from the waves, salt still clinging to her like lace, and she agrees. She'll ask Hephaestus, the god of the forge, to craft something divine, something worthy of what comes next. While you wait, the camp falls into a hush. The soldiers don't cheer, don't laugh, don't even play dice. Achilles sits alone by the shoreline, staring out at the water like it might speak back. You wonder what he sees. Patroclus's face, maybe, or the end of the story. Then the armor arrives. It is, well, it's ridiculous, honestly.
Beautiful, terrible, completely over the top. The breastplate glows. The shield contains a miniature world on it. Cities, rivers, stars, people dancing. You think Hephaestus might be showing off a little. Even the helmet looks like it could start a war just by being placed on the ground too dramatically. Achilles doesn't smile. He just puts it on. And the earth starts to shake. He goes to battle not like a man returning to war, but like a god reclaiming territory. You run to keep up, ducking behind carts and shield walls, because honestly, you want to live long enough to tell someone about this. The Myrmidons follow, shouting his name like a war chant. Achilles doesn't shout. He moves like silence made of bronze. He kills, quickly, cleanly, hundreds, maybe. Trojan soldiers scatter like frightened birds. And the gods? Even they seem to take a step back. Ares watches with something that might be respect. Athena hovers above, eyes bright. Apollo? Well, Apollo's been stirring trouble this whole time, but even he goes quiet. You reach the walls of Troy just in time to see Hector step out to meet him. There's no crowd, no trumpet, no ceremony, just two men in the dust, one burning with rage, the other tired. You look at Hector's face and realize he knows. This isn't his day, but he comes anyway, because honor, because family, because sometimes you don't get to choose the ending, you only get to face it. They fight, and it is awful, not clumsy, not chaotic, just painful. Every strike echoes across the plain. You feel it in your ribs. Hector lands some blows. Achilles lands more. Eventually, Hector falls. Achilles doesn't stop. He ties Hector's body to his chariot and drags it around the city walls, not out of strategy, out of fury, out of grief. You look at the Trojans on the ramparts. Priam, the old king, his robes heavy with mourning, Andromache, Hector's wife, clutching their child. The city trembles. This isn't a victory. It's a wound. Even the gods wince. That night, back in camp, no one celebrates. Achilles sits beside the body of Patroclus, whispering things too soft for you to catch. He refuses food, refuses wine. His new armor shines in the firelight, untouched by the blood of the day. And then something happens that shouldn't. Priam, the Trojan king, slips into the Greek camp, alone, unarmed. Just a cloak, a sack of gold, and eyes that have seen too many sons die. You watch, stunned, as he kneels before Achilles and kisses his hands, the same hands that killed his child. Achilles doesn't move at first, then his shoulders begin to shake, not with rage, with something heavier. He lifts Priam gently, like he's suddenly remembered how to be human. They talk, quietly. You catch pieces. Fathers, sons, loss. Achilles agrees to return Hector's body. No dramatic speeches, no thunderclaps, just grief, shared and softened. You help prepare Hector's body. The soldiers let you. You wash the dust from his skin, try to smooth the dents in the armor. You place coins over his eyes, though the old myths haven't decided if that's really for passage or just for peace of mind. Either way, it feels right. In the distance,
The Trojans begin funeral songs. Back in the Greek camp, Achilles finally eats a crust of bread, a few olives. He doesn't taste any of it, but he eats it anyway. That night he sleeps beside Patroclus, his arms curled around empty air. And you lie down too. The stars overhead seem closer tonight, not friendly, not cruel, just watching. History will turn this into legend. They'll carve Achilles in marble, sing songs about Hector's nobility, argue in temples and universities about what it all meant. But you'll remember the dust, the grief, the moment one man forgave another, and how, in the middle of a war built on rage and pride, someone chose mercy. You wake to birdsong, not the poetic kind. These are scratchy-throated camp birds, pecking at breadcrumbs and squabbling like they own the place. Achilles is already up, sitting with his feet in the river. You can tell he hasn't bathed. His hair's matted, eyes glassy. There's a kind of aftermath hanging around him, like smoke after a fire. You stretch, bones popping, and step quietly around the embers of last night's campfires. The myrmidons are subdued. No clanging, no shouting. Even the cook stirs porridge like he's afraid of waking something. Word has spread. Achilles will not fight again today. He's resting, mourning still, or maybe just finished. A man like that doesn't burn forever. And anyway, there's a new problem. Odysseus, wily as ever, brings news. The Greeks are planning something strange, not a full assault. No, that hasn't worked for a decade. They want to try a trick, the kind that requires teamwork, carpentry, and a deeply suspicious horse. But that's still a ways off. For now, you're still in the echo of Hector's funeral. The Trojans mourn for 12 days. Achilles agrees not to attack during that time. It's a moment of peace, thin and fragile as papyrus in the rain. You slip through the camp to check on supplies, mostly to avoid being asked to help with weapon repair. A sack of barley here, some amphorae there. You pass a bard, strumming a lyre and whispering a song he's still shaping. He hums Achilles' name like it's part of a spell. You wonder what kind of song it'll be when it's finished. A lament? A hymn? A warning? Historians still argue whether Achilles' truce with Priam changed anything politically. Did it stall the war? Win any favor with the gods? But to you, it doesn't feel like politics. It feels like someone remembered, even briefly, that grief is a shared language. The days pass with little noise. The Trojans rebuild parts of the wall. The Greeks patch ships, stitch wounds. You try not to stare at Achilles too often. Something about him feels less grounded now, like he's half in this world, half somewhere else. On the 9th day, Achilles asks for a proper pyre for Patroclus. You help gather the wood. It's an enormous thing. Logs stacked like towers, branches twined with herbs and ribbons. Achilles places Patroclus's body on top with a tenderness you didn't know he had. Then, in full armor, he circles the pyre 3 times. The horses whinny, the men bow their heads. He lights it. The flames roar to life, greedy and gold, and the heat stings your eyes even from a distance. The smoke spirals upward, thick with spice and memory. You think about the old belief that smoke carries the soul to the heavens. If that's true, Patroclus is traveling fast. Achilles doesn't cry, not visibly, but he stands so still for so long you wonder if he's frozen inside. Later, the ashes are gathered into a golden urn placed beside Achilles' tent. He tells someone, maybe you, maybe no one in particular, that when he dies, he wants to be buried in the same urn. You nod, like that's a normal thing to say before breakfast. Then the war resumes, and just like that, you're back in it. Blood, bronze, shouting, and sand. The Trojans have their own grief now, their own fury. And they fight like it. You watch the lines crash into each other like waves. You hear Achilles again, the way thunder rolls down a mountain. But something's changed. He's more reckless, less careful. Still powerful. Gods, he's terrifying. But it's like he doesn't care anymore if he walks away from the fight.
One day you find him sitting by the river, not after battle, but before it. He's tracing shapes in the mud with one finger. You sit beside him without asking, and he says quietly, "They say my death comes soon."
You don't know what to say, so you don't say anything. You just sit there, two people in the lull between storms, listening to the reeds whisper. Quirky historical tidbit. Some later poets claimed Achilles was given a choice early in life. Live long and forgettable, or die young and become immortal in song. And Achilles? He chose the song. And now that tune is getting louder. You help prepare the next day's supplies. You tighten your sandals, check your knife, kiss a lucky charm you don't believe in. And when Achilles mounts his chariot, you follow at a respectful distance, close enough to witness, far enough not to be collateral damage.
The Trojans are waiting. Among them, Paris,
Bow in hand, lurking in the shadows, eyes fixed on one shining target.
You don't know it yet, but this will be the day Achilles falls.
And you will remember it forever. The day begins strangely quiet, the kind of quiet that makes your stomach tighten like the world's holding its breath. You check your gear 3 times before realizing you've already done that. The camp is tense. Nobody jokes this morning. Even the roosters seem to crow more respectfully. Achilles is already mounted, armor gleaming like a threat. He doesn't speak, just nods once toward the gates of Troy. His chariot horses paw at the dust, eager, impatient, like they know what's coming, like they've read the end of the story. You join the march. The Greeks move like one body, shields locked, sand crunching under leather sandals. The sky is unusually clear, too clear, the kind of morning that looks beautiful in a painting but terrible in real life. Up ahead, Troy's gates hold firm, but there's movement along the battlements. Archers, runners, the occasional flash of gold as a helmet catches the light. Paris is up there. You don't know much about him, just that he's the reason this whole thing started. The man who stole a queen and got 1,000 ships sent to his doorstep. He's not a warrior by nature. He prefers soft sandals and gossip. But today he's holding a bow and his face is set. Achilles charges. You've seen him fight before, but this is different. He's not just trying to win, he's looking for something, someone. His eyes scan the field with sharp, furious purpose. Every man who stands in his way falls quickly, almost mercifully. The Trojans retreat. Some try to regroup, others simply run. The ground is already slick with churned-up dirt and spilled futures. And then it happens. Paris looses an arrow. It doesn't look like much, just a streak of motion lost in the chaos, but it finds its mark, Achilles' heel. The one part of him not dipped in the river Styx, the one part of him still entirely human. He stumbles, just slightly, but it's enough. Another arrow follows, this one less mythic, more ordinary. It hits high in the shoulder. Achilles drops to one knee. His chariot horses rear, confused. You watch it unfold like a play in slow motion. A god brought low by something as simple as distance and timing. Historians still argue whether it was Paris who truly killed Achilles or if Apollo guided the shot, jealous or vengeful or simply bored. Either way, the end result is the same. The battlefield stills. Achilles, greatest of the Greeks, slumps forward. You run. You're not alone. Several others break rank to reach him. The Trojans hesitate, some out of respect, others out of fear. Achilles is still dangerous, even in death. When you reach him, he's barely breathing. Blood stains the sand beneath him in rich, dark arcs. You kneel, pressing cloth to the wound, whispering things that might be comfort or nonsense. Achilles opens his eyes once, finds yours, and says, "Tell them songs." You nod, as if you understand. Then he exhales. You sit there for a moment, stunned. The war keeps happening around you, but it feels muted, far away. You realize your hand is still pressed to the wound, though the bleeding has stopped. You pull away, stand, wipe your hands on your tunic. The chariot is pulled around. Carefully, reverently, Achilles' body is placed upon it. You help tie the ropes, help guide the horses back to camp. No one stops you. Even the Trojans know this moment is sacred. That night, there's no celebration, no revel, just silence. The Myrmidons light a dozen small fires in a circle, one for each major battle Achilles fought. They sit around them in silence, heads bowed. Odysseus speaks briefly. So does Ajax. Even Menelaus mumbles a few words, though most of it's unintelligible. You think about the stories that will come from this. The ballads, the poems, the frescoes on palace walls. Quirky historical tidbit. Later writers claim that Alexander the Great kept a copy of the Iliad under his pillow, folded to the part where Achilles dies. He said it reminded him what glory costs. You don't sleep that night. Instead, you help wrap Achilles' body in clean linen, soaked in oils and herbs. He's heavy, not just physically, though that too, but emotionally. You've never carried so much expectation in your arms before. The urn is brought from beside Patroclus' tent. Achilles is cremated with honors that rival kings, his ashes placed beside his beloveds. Two heroes, two halves
of one myth. And now the Greeks are leaderless. The war must go on,
because it always does. But something essential is gone from it. The rage, the poetry, the strange tragic beauty that made it feel more than just blood and dirt.
You walk back to your tent. The sky has no clouds. The stars feel colder tonight. You don't even bother cleaning the sand off your legs when you get back to your tent. The dust sticks to your skin, but it doesn't matter. Nothing really does right now. Achilles is gone, the Greeks are quiet, and you're tired in a way that sleep won't fix. The camp moves slowly for days. No battles, just murmurs. People drift past each other like ghosts, carrying spears they don't expect to use. Even Agamemnon lowers his voice. It's as if Achilles' absence carved a hole in the world, and everyone's afraid to step too close to the edge. There's a funeral game ceremony eventually. You don't compete. You just watch. Chariot races, foot races, spear-throwing contests. Each one feels like someone trying too hard to pretend things are normal. You sit in the back with the squires and armor-bearers, trading half-hearted bets and chewing stale bread. Someone wins a golden cup. Someone else throws a discus so far it hits a tent pole. Laughter ripples for a second, then fades. Still it helps. A little. Gives people something to look at besides the sky. And then comes the question, who leads the Myrmidons now? Ajax thinks it should be him. He fought beside Achilles. He's strong, famous, not entirely lacking in charisma. But Odysseus, well, Odysseus thinks the role should go to someone clever, someone who understands strategy, not just brute strength. So they do what all brilliant military minds do in a crisis. They argue, and then they duel, not with swords, but with speeches. You watch them circle each other in front of the whole army. Ajax booming, Odysseus weaving words like fishing nets. It's more theater than battle, but the tension is real. Historians still argue who actually won that contest. Some say Odysseus convinced the leaders. Others claim Ajax walked away in disgust, refusing to lead a group of soldiers who needed cleverness to function. You remember both of them looking tired. Eventually, the matter is decided. Odysseus leads, but only in spirit. The Myrmidons remain together, but their heart is gone. You hear someone say, "Now we're just another unit." It doesn't sound bitter, just honest. And then there's the Trojan side. Paris is celebrated as a hero, but not for long. There are whispers of a strange wound, a poisoned arrow from a previous skirmish, maybe, or a curse. One morning word spreads like spilled wine. Paris is dead. You don't feel anything about it, just surprise. The man who killed Achilles is gone, and the war barely pauses. It's like the world keeps turning, even when the story is over. Quirky historical tidbit. Later Greek plays imagine Paris limping off into the hills after being wounded, begging an old flame, Oenone, a mountain nymph, to heal him. She refuses. He dies. Then she throws herself onto his pyre in guilt. Messy, even by tragic standards. But here, in this camp, Nobody's talking about nymphs. They're talking about a giant wooden horse. That's right.
The Greeks, tired of siege tactics and endless bloodshed, decide to gamble everything on misdirection. Odysseus claims the idea is symbolic, a gift to the gods, a peace offering, something big, beautiful, and suspiciously hollow.
You're assigned to help build it. There's something weirdly calming about carpentry after months of war. You saw beams, hammer dowels, lash ropes. The inside is cramped, just enough space for a few dozen warriors if they don't breathe too much. The whole thing looks ridiculous at first, but then you see it under moonlight,
All polished wood and clever joints, and you think, maybe this will work. Maybe the Trojans are tired too. Maybe they want to believe in gifts.
Maybe people believe the stories they want to believe.
That night, the horse is completed. You step back to admire it. It's tall enough to scrape the clouds, tall enough to feel important. Someone cracks a joke about how, in a few hundred years, tourists will probably climb inside it for fun. You don't laugh.
There's one last meeting. Odysseus lays out the plan. The Greek ships will sail away, out of sight, leaving the horse behind as an offering. A handful of men will hide inside. The Trojans will take the horse into the city. Celebration, sleep. Then at night, the soldiers inside will sneak out, open the gates, and let the rest of the Greeks in, who will return under cover of darkness.
Simple, terrifying.
It's decided.
The chosen warriors step forward. Odysseus, Menelaus, Neoptolemus, Achilles' son, flown in from somewhere you don't ask about. You're not picked, you're half relieved. You help roll the horse to the beach. At sunrise, the ships sail. You wave like it's real, and then you hide in a ditch, behind a stone outcrop, wherever you can crouch and wait for the next chapter of this long, ridiculous story to write itself.
You don't see the horse enter Troy,
But you hear about it bit by bit from the lookout scouts and the half-mad Greek who volunteered to get captured and spin a sob story. His name's Sinon, and his whole job is to sell the lie. And apparently, he's good at it. He weeps, grovels, spits out curses at the Greeks, swears the horse is sacred, a tribute to Athena meant to bless the Greeks' voyage home. He says it's too big to fit through the gates on purpose, because if the Trojans damage it, they'll bring Athena's wrath down on their city.
You're not sure whether the Trojans really believe him or if they just want to. Maybe they're exhausted. Maybe they need this story to be true. And so, with a lot of shouting, dragging, and a very enthusiastic crowd, they bring it in, past the gates, into the city. It's absurd, but it works. Some say a priest named Laocoon tried to stop them, warning that Greeks rarely give gifts without a catch. Then, so the story goes, giant sea serpents burst from the ocean and devoured him and his sons. A sign, the Trojans decide. Athena must be angry. That clinches it. Into the city the horse goes. Historians still argue whether there really was a horse at all, or if it was a metaphor, or siege equipment, or even a secret tunnel. But you've seen it, built it. It was real as a war can be anyway. That night,
the city of Troy celebrates. You imagine the wine, the laughter, the slow dissolving of tension, the way soldiers finally take off their armor, civilians return to routines, and priests offer prayers they don't entirely believe. You imagine the way the horse must look in the firelight, silent, looming, as if waiting. And you imagine the Greeks inside. Odysseus, kneeling in the dark. Menelaus, gripping his sword, thinking of Helen. Neoptolemus, sharpening a blade, trying not to compare himself to his father, crammed together, breathing shallowly, sweating in the wooden silence. You wait by the cliff with others who stayed behind. Hours pass. Then the signal. A small flame flickers near the beach. A returning ship. The fleet has come back under cover of darkness, rowing quietly. No sails, no shouting, just the hiss of water and the thump of oars. You help them land. You help them arm. No one speaks. The air is too thick. Then comes the second signal. A torch inside the horse. The trap is sprung. You stay outside the walls. You're not part of the strike team, but you hear the screams. You see the city flicker to life with flame, not joy. And you know Troy is falling. You remember how it looked from afar? Walls said to be built by gods, towers that pierced the clouds. Now they crack and burn and split like any other city made by human hands. Quirky historical tidbit. One obscure poet once claimed that the Trojans considered burning the horse, then debated displaying it as a monument. In the end, one young man convinced them to bring it in because it was too beautiful to destroy. Never underestimate aesthetic peer pressure. By dawn, the gates are open, and the Greeks pour in. It's chaos, fire, ash, metal on stone. You move with the wave, not because you want to, but because everyone does. You cross into the city of Troy for the first time, and it already doesn't exist. Shattered statues, toppled carts, people screaming names that don't get answered. You don't swing a sword, you just run, fetch water, pull rubble off someone's leg, watch from corners while gods and ghosts dance through the streets. The house of Priam, once the beating heart of the city, collapses. Some say Neoptolemus stormed in and killed the old king himself at the altar of Zeus. Others say Priam cursed him with his last breath. Either way, the boy came out with red on his boots and a look in his eyes like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. And Helen? Well, Menelaus finds her. Some say he kills her on the spot. Others say he takes her back like nothing happened. A few versions describe her flashing him a smile and saying something about unfinished business. No one knows which story is true. You see her once, across the square, her dress torn, her hair loose, her expression unreadable. She doesn't look scared, just exhausted. You wonder if she even remembers what started all this. Historians still argue if she was ever really in Troy at all. Some claim she fled to Egypt, that this whole war was a trick of doppelgangers and bad intelligence. But it doesn't matter now. Whoever that was, she's here, and the city is not. The sun rises over smoke. You sit on the edge of a broken fountain, chewing dried figs and tasting ash. The war is over. You're alive. You expected to feel something.
You don't.
A boy walks by, dragging a toy chariot with one wheel missing. A girl follows him, clutching a doll with no head. They don't cry. They don't talk. They just walk into whatever's next. The Greeks begin organizing plunder. You hear Agamemnon yelling about protocol. You hear someone complain that there's no one left to impress. You just lie back and stare at the sky, wondering how long it will take for people to turn this mess into a story. And you already know the answer, not long at all. It's the next day, maybe 2 days later. Time gets blurry in the aftermath. You're sore in that weird way. Grief mixes with muscle strain. Every part of you feels overused, overfilled, overtired. You wander through what's left of Troy. There are still embers glowing in alleyways, roofs slumped like wilted flowers, marble pillars now lying sideways in the dirt like abandoned chess pieces. A dog pads silently past you, its fur dusted with ash. It doesn't look lost, just done. You step around splintered doors and bits of bronze, picking your way through the remnants of what used to be stories, families, temples. The city that launched 1,000 ships now couldn't even float a raft. And then, somewhere near the marketplace, you see the horse again. The wooden one, its belly now empty, its seams cracked and blistered from heat. You realize it's just a shell, a trick with no soul, hollow and smoking in the morning light. Someone has scrawled something across its leg in soot. You can't read it. You don't want to. You sit down beside it anyway, because something in you needs to be close to it, like touching the villain in a story you half liked. Historians still argue whether the horse was truly a tactical marvel or just a fluke that got lucky. Some scholars believe the idea wasn't Odysseus's at all, but stolen from an older myth or a siege manual long lost to time. Honestly, it wouldn't surprise you. Nothing about war ever feels as original as people want it to. Later that day, the inventory begins. Every general wants to claim something. Agamemnon stakes his claim to Cassandra, the Trojan priestess cursed to speak prophecies no one believes. She stands silent and blazing as he drags her away, like a candle someone forgot to blow out. She doesn't scream. That's somehow worse. Menelaus takes Helen. Whether she goes willingly, no one knows. You hear they argued, and that he dropped his sword twice while trying to threaten her. That she rolled her eyes, that she kissed him and then slapped him, that he wept. Honestly, it all sounds true. And as the war spoils are loaded up, ship by ship, you help carry crates. Your body moves on its own, like laundry day again, but this time instead of soap and linen, it's scrolls, statues, and one extremely confused goat. You overhear that Odysseus wants to head home immediately. He's ready for peace, for Ithaca, for silence. He's got this wild idea about building a bed into a tree and never leaving it again. You respect that. But of course the gods won't let him go that easily. There's talk, muttered and uneasy, that the gods are angry, that the sack of Troy, particularly the violence in the temples and the shrines, crossed a line.
Someone says a priest warned them.
Someone else says the wind has already gone still. You look at the horizon. The sea is glass, unmoving. Fringe historical tidbit. In later versions of the myth, one minor character claims he saw the horse move, like breathe, for just a second before they opened it. It became a whole mystery cult in the islands, worship of the wooden god. The sect didn't last long. You start noticing omens, birds flying backward, a sailor coughing up black feathers, a pair of twins who've started speaking in unison about storms to come.
You don't even flinch. You just nod.
Of course, it's never over. You go to the shore to check the ships. One has already sprung a leak. Another is missing its mast, snapped clean off, probably overnight, though no one heard a thing. And as you look out across the calm, endless sea, you realize something awful. No wind, nothing moves. The air is thick and warm and perfectly still, like someone holding their breath. You think of Poseidon, of Athena, of all the gods who supposedly chose sides, shifted tides, and whispered in ears. You wonder if they're watching now. You wonder if they're disappointed or amused. You sit down in the sand. The sun blazes above. You can feel the weight of it, like it's pressing you into the earth. You hear a conch blow somewhere behind you. Orders. Everyone is to stay near the beach until the winds return. You sigh and lie back, letting the grit of war and salt and ash coat your arms. The war is done, but the journey home has barely begun. You close your eyes and picture your home, not the place exactly, but the feeling. The smell of warm grain, the way a cat curls around your ankle when no one's looking, the sound of sandals across a wooden floor. It feels so far away, and something tells you it's going to take a very, very long time to get there. You stay on the beach for days, maybe weeks. Time bleeds out into the sea, smooth and shapeless, like spilled oil. The ships are ready, but the wind still won't come, and no one wants to say it aloud, but you all know. It's the gods. They're brooding, sulking, deciding. So, like good little mortals, the Greeks start praying again. Offerings pile up on sand-crusted altars, wine, fruit, blood. An ox is slaughtered at dawn, its warm breath curling into the still air as if trying to animate it. Nothing changes. Agamemnon grows restless. You see him pacing, barking orders that go nowhere. Odysseus sits silently, sharpening his sword, not because he needs to, but because his hands need something to do. Even Menelaus, who got what he came for, looks empty. And then comes the oracle. They drag her out from one of the ships, Cassandra, still robed in red, still regal even after everything. She's the last person anyone wants to listen to, and the only one who might know what's coming. She doesn't scream this time, just murmurs. A daughter. For a wind. That's all she says. Historians still argue whether the windlessness at Aulis before the war was mirrored at Troy's end, or if this is just poetic symmetry inserted by later bards. But in your world, it's very, very real. The gods demand balance. They always do. Agamemnon hears the words, and he goes pale. You hear the name Iphigenia whispered again. his daughter, the one he sacrificed to launch the fleet in the first place. Now someone else must pay, a daughter for a wind. That evening, there's a hush across the camp. People avoid eye contact. Even the sea seems to sense what's coming. And then, shockingly, there's a volunteer, Polyxena, the youngest daughter of Priam and Hecuba. Barely more than a girl. Some say she offers herself up for the sake of her people. Others say Neoptolemus insisted she die on Achilles' grave to calm his angry shade. You don't know which is true. Both are terrible. They bring her out at dawn. She doesn't cry. She doesn't tremble. She walks with the kind of grace that makes you hate the gods for needing beauty to suffer before they're satisfied. A quirky fringe version of the story claims Polyxena whispered a secret to Odysseus before she died, some ancient knowledge about Poseidon's lost temple under the sea. No one can confirm it, but Odysseus never speaks of that morning again. The sacrifice is quiet. One moment she's there, the next gone. No screams, no lightning bolts, just silence. And then, almost imperceptibly, the wind shifts. A single breeze skims across the sand, light as a sigh. Then another. The sails start to stir. The sea begins to ripple. The gods apparently are appeased. The fleet prepares to leave. You pack what little you own. Some dried figs, a bronze hairpin, the corner of a torn tunic you found in the ruins that smells like lavender and smoke. You board your ship, eyes on the horizon, not the city behind you. Troy still smolders, but it's done. No one will rebuild it. They'll let time cover it in dust and myths and contradictions. You find a seat near the stern, tuck your knees to your chest, and finally let yourself breathe. Not relief, just breath, like your lungs forgot how. The ships creak forward slowly, like they're waking from the same long nightmare. And you begin to drift. The water rocks you, the salt licks your lips. The oars beat like a slow heart. Odysseus stands at the bow of his ship, already squinting ahead like he can see the monsters waiting. Agamemnon polishes his armor, even though there's no one left to fight. Menelaus keeps staring at Helen, as if trying to remember why he came for her in the first place. You don't talk much. There's not much to say when you've just helped burn a legend to the ground. Historians still debate what parts of the Trojan War actually happened. Was there ever a Helen? Was there ever a wooden horse? Were there gods who tangled themselves in mortal lives, or just powerful people with sharp egos and bad communication skills? You don't have answers, just memories, sounds. The way the ground shook when the gates fell, the hiss of oil lamps in midnight corridors, the strange calm of waiting inside a giant wooden lie. And now, the sea, wide, blue, forgetful. It doesn't care about your story, but maybe, just maybe, someone else will. You lean your head against the mast and close your eyes, letting the rhythm pull you into sleep. You're not sure where you'll land, but for now, you're away from Troy, and that's enough. The voyage home is, unsurprisingly, not smooth. You'd think after 10 years of blood and dust and heartbreak, the gods might grant a peaceful sail back across the wine-dark sea. But no, this is Greek myth, remember? no one gets off that easy. The winds turn fickle. The sea mutters in strange tongues. Islands loom where no maps say they should be. Men vanish overboard, pulled by something beneath the surface, or perhaps their own guilt. No one really asks anymore. You spend most days staring at the sky. There's a crackling in the air, like Zeus is watching, which unfortunately he probably is. And then, of course, come the stories. You begin to hear them from neighboring ships, passed across waves like gossip around a smoky hearth. Agamemnon gets home and is murdered in the bath by his wife, Clytemnestra, and her new lover. You picture the steam curling off his throat, mixing with the scent of bay leaves. Historians still argue whether Clytemnestra acted purely out of revenge for Iphigenia, or whether she was just done waiting around for a man who'd sacrificed their daughter like she was driftwood. Either way, she doesn't wait to stab him. Odysseus naturally vanishes. Some say he's shipwrecked. Others say he's cursed. One version claims he gets stuck on an island with a lovesick nymph who just wants to braid his hair forever. Honestly, could be worse. Helen and Menelaus return to Sparta, but things are tense. The whole 10-year war over you vibe isn't exactly romantic anymore, especially now that the bloom's off the rose and Menelaus keeps bringing up the way you looked at Paris that one time. And as for you, well, you drift. Your ship lands eventually, somewhere rocky, half forgotten, where olive trees claw their way out of cliffs and goats look at you like they've seen things. You settle in, mend nets, trade stories for bread. You find you're surprisingly good at telling them, especially the quieter bits, the moments most people skip over, like the way Achilles used to hum to his horse before battle, or how Paris once saved a sparrow from drowning and seemed ashamed anyone saw, or the way Polyxena stood at dawn, unflinching, a girl who made even the gods hesitate. A quirky fringe theory claims that Homer himself heard stories from a survivor like you, that his blind bard thing was just cover. He was really some salty old laundry porter from the Trojan ruins, spinning yarns under an awning while people traded figs. You'd like that, because you start to notice something. The more you talk, the more people lean in, not to the blood, but to the in-between parts, the absurd parts, the part where Zeus turns into a swan to seduce someone and no one even blinks, the part where a wooden horse changes history, the part where a laundress hides a sash that still smells like lotus oil and guilt. You keep speaking, in taverns, on steps, in markets where the air smells like crushed olives and ambition, and slowly you become something strange, not a hero, but a kind of echo. People start bringing you little offerings, dried lavender, a ribbon, once a lump of beeswax shaped like a lion. It's absurd. You're not a god, but you are a keeper of what gods leave behind. One day, a child tugs your sleeve and asks what happened after, and you tell them that Helen dreamed of ships long after they'd burned, that Odysseus spent more time lost than found, that sometimes the wind doesn't come unless something is given up, and that no one, not even the mighty, escapes the stain of their own story. Historians still try to scrub these myths clean organize them, chart them, turn them into timelines and genealogies. But they always miss something, the feeling, the dust in the folds, the odd laugh in the middle of tragedy, the smell of seaweed and regret. You never go back to Troy.
You don't need to. It comes with you.
In the creases of your robe, in the way your hands still know how to wring a tunic, in the soft hum you still carry about a jackal and a bar of salt.
And then, one day much later, when your hair is silver and your eyes go misty at the edges, you see something. A swan,
Just standing by the water, watching, and for a ridiculous second you think, Zeus? But it just honks, flaps its wings, and waddles off into the reeds. You smile.
Of course it does.
The gods never visit you directly. They prefer metaphors.
You return home,
Light a small lamp, and sit by the hearth. Outside, the wind stirs the olive branches. Inside, you warm your hands and murmur the opening lines once more.
hey guys, tonight we...
Because there's always another story, another twist, another impossible transformation, even when the war is long over. Especially then, your fire burns low. Outside, the wind whispers through the trees, soft, like it's trying not to wake anything. The embers crackle quietly, like they remember louder times, but prefer the hush. You settle deeper into your seat, your robe pulled snug around your shoulders, feet tucked beneath you, like you're folding into the story itself. You think back on all the lives that tangled through your own. Gods, kings, ghosts, some you hated, some you pitied, some, like Hector or Polyxena, still echo in your chest when the nights get too still. Sometimes you ask yourself, did any of it matter?
And the answer
Always arrives the same way, gentle, inevitable, like tide water creeping over a sand drawing.
of course it did.
Maybe not in the way poets claim, not in the statues or songs or sea charts, but in the way someone once asked you to tell it again and again, and then someone else, and then their child. It's not the sword swings they remember, not really. It's the way Helen glanced over her shoulder, unsure if she was walking toward freedom or fire. It's the sound of Achilles laughing, just once, freely, before his doom tightened around him like armor. It's the warm bread in Andromache's kitchen, the ashes on Cassandra's feet, the sound of ropes creaking as you pulled yourself inside a lie carved from pine. Historians still argue which parts of the Trojan War were real. Maybe none of it. Maybe all of it. Maybe that's not the point.
What's real is this.
You were there, and now you've told it.
And in the telling,
You've made the silence after war a little less empty.
a quirky belief from a forgotten island says that when a person dies,
Their stories become stars. Not the bright ones, the faint ones, the ones you only see when the sky's darkest, the ones that don't shout but stay. You lie down slowly now, bones creaking, body exhaling the long breath it's held since Troy. Outside, the night has deepened, the wind has gentled, and the gods, if they're still watching, have grown quiet. You pull the blanket over your shoulders and feel the weight of it, not just fabric, but years, myths, moments. And then, As your eyelids grow heavy, you hear it. Not a swan this time, just the hush of olive leaves, the lapping of distant waves, and the soft, familiar voice of memory saying, "Hey guys, tonight we—" But the rest can wait.
It always can.
You're safe now. You're home. Let the stars hold the rest.
Good night.